When people discover that I speak Esperanto, one of the most common questions that I get asked in various forms is whether or not Esperanto is dead. Is it a living language? Does anybody really use it? This tends to go hand in hand with similar questions that get asked in online videos, such as, why did Esperanto fail? Well, I suppose the first answer to that last question is question in itself. Fail at doing what? You see, right from the start, L.L. Zamenhof never intended for Esperanto to be anything more than an auxiliary language. A second language that people could use to bridge the gap between their own language and that of a foreign speaker. He never intended it to become a language that replaced anything that was already being spoken. So in that regards, Esperanto is still around doing a very good job, having an estimated 2 million speakers at various levels in over 115 different countries around the world. There are online video blogs, entire radio stations, a growing culture, more and more accessible literature, and a devoted online fan base that has been around since the original translations of open source software and Linux and Unix operating system. In fact, saying that, online, the advent of Duolingo has introduced millions of new people to the language, with hundreds of thousands still actively learning to speak it. I suppose then that this answers the first question as well. Is Esperanto a dead language? As you can see, absolutely not. So why do people get this impression? Well, one of the simplest observations to make is that there is no national boundary within which Esperanto is a national language. Most languages originate from a geographical location, and therefore the people, the country, and their language tend to have the same or very similar names. And there is a specific regionally originating accent that accompanies the language. It's very easy to confuse nationality with language, even by people who profess to be language teachers or language specialists. I have seen language tutors laugh when I have informed them that there are 1,500 to 2,500 native Esperanto speakers. So what really is a native? My wife, for example, is Spanish, but Spanish is not her first native language. Gallego is. So instantly that redefines what native means in the context of language versus nationality. Your native language is really your first language, which you have learned in depth from birth. And native Esperantists see Esperanto as their first language, regardless of their country of birth, and have learned the national language as a second language. Now, of course, it should be noted that that's not a detriment. With the benefits of Esperanto, as you will see in this course, native Esperantists tend to be exceptional linguists and can be fluent in many languages. But does this mean that while Esperanto has not actually failed at anything, could it have gone much further than it actually has? The answer to this is absolutely. And here are just 3 of the big missed opportunities, through no fault of Esperanto itself, of being a world-renowned and commonly spoken language. Neutral Moresnet was a condominium in the 3-country point between Belgium, Prussia and the Netherlands from the early part of the 19th century up until about 1920. With shared government control over the region, the area could not help but be a neutral party. But to be honest, it was a perfect arrangement in any case, being only about 1.5 square miles in area and possessing a population of less than 4,000 prior to its dissolution. It never really had any power of its own, so why did it exist at all? Well, the area was a little bit of an anomaly. When Napoleon was finally defeated and the Congress of Vienna started to redraw national borders, both the Netherlands and Prussia recognized that there was a valuable zinc mine in the district. Remember that at the time, there was only one other place in Europe where zinc ore was being processed, Bristol in the UK. Neither country wanted to give up its rights to the area. So when push came to shove, the Netherlands and Prussia finally agreed to share control of the region. The Netherlands' controlling position being taken over by Belgium after it became independent in 1830. So what's this got to do with Esperanto? Well, in that regards, Neutral Moresnet had what it saw as a problem. It was a small area of land between 2 great states without its own self-governing powers and having to support multiple languages. The world had changed, and the reasons why multiple powers might want to claim it had slackened in any case, or so they thought. And so early in the 20th century, the population made significant moves to found the world's first Esperanto-speaking state, to be called Amikejo, or the place of friendship, to replace the condominium. In 1908, the Esperanto March was proposed as the state's national anthem, sung to the tune O Tannenbaum. A coat of arms and a flag were unveiled, and the World National Congress Esperanto declared that Neutral Moresnet would become the world capital of Esperanto. So what went wrong? What went wrong was that they had misjudged the response of the governing states, Germany in particular. Remember the years that we're talking about here. Germany was being particularly aggressive, and were even identified undertaking deliberate sabotage in the process of the vote. It all came to a final end in 1914 when Germany invaded Belgium, overran the small community, and declared its annexation as part of the opening moves of the First World War. Now, while the international community never recognized the annexation, unfortunately, things would never be the same again. And when the First World War was ended, Neutral Moresnet and a number of other areas around it were awarded to Belgium in reparations, part of the Treaty of Versailles. Time had run out for the creation of the world's first Esperanto-speaking state. Now, after the First World War, a second major opportunity arose when the Iranian delegation to the League of Nations proposed that Esperanto be adopted as the language for international cooperation. A report had been submitted by a representative to the 13th World Congress of Esperanto, which detailed what Esperanto was really all about and its inherent international aims. And the Iranian delegation decided that it would be a very good idea to extend those aims into something more practical. 10 of the League of Nations delegates voted their approval, with only 1 voting against, and repeatedly over the next 3 years. Why? Well, that dissenting representative was Gabriel Hanotaux from France, who had views on how French was losing its role as the international or the diplomatic language. He saw Esperanto as a threat and used his veto powers to not only vote against the proposal, but also any recognition of Esperanto at all. Despite this, the League did advise member states to include Esperanto in their national curriculums. But this was effectively shots fired. France banned all teaching of Esperanto in any French schools and universities. Now, only 20 years later, a similar opportunity presented itself at the successor of the League of Nations, the United Nations itself. The proposal put forward this time was intended to teach Esperanto at schools around the world and promote Esperanto as the language of tourism and international commerce. This time, however, the proposal did not fall at the hands of the French, who still looked at their language as being the international lingua franca and diplomatic language. See, this time the proposal even had the support of the French president, Vincent Auriol. It was supported by prime ministers, government officials, vast numbers of scientific and educational staff. No, this time the proposal was actually voted down in a fashion seemingly to be repeated on so many occasions in recent years by the United States. Despite the UK's backing of Esperanto, the US saw English as the international language. Okay, as a small addendum to this video, I thought that as there were opportunities to have Esperanto become the official international language at both the League of Nations and the UN, which failed, I'd share this with you. Only last year, an unofficial public survey which asked whether Esperanto should become the official language of the EU resulted in over 90% yes votes being cast. We can only hope.